Dr. Francisco, this knowledge-filled session will be presented by the Vice President of AI and Data for Asia Pacific, NTT Data Incorporated. Dr. Francisco is also a certified customer experience professional, an advisor to leading organizations, and an expert in corporate strategy and innovation. He also holds a PhD in international management with an expertise in Gen AI strategy framework. And in this session, Dr. Francisco will guide us through the essential step for building a successful digital transformation roadmap. So without further ado, let's give a warm welcome to Dr. Francisco. The stage is yours. You were still.
Francis, I think you're mute.
Hold on.
Okay, now I'm okay. Now, thank you so much for unmuting me. Appreciate that. But can you guys hear me now? Well,
Yes, we can hear you now.
okay. So let me share my screen. Okay. No, I think for some reason, again, it does not allow me to share my screen, but it's okay. First of all, I want to thank Andrew and New in Asia for inviting us to this talk. And I think it's been a very timely for us to share our experience with each other. The most important reason why I'm here is to learn from the experts here. And Dr. Koh, I listened to your presentation just now, and your research is fabulous. It's really going to the insights of how we should be really looking at organizations, transforming ourselves. And also just now, I also heard that the keynote speaker talk about learning, organization learning particularly. And I'm a big fan about organization learning, individual learning. Now, although I have a couple of slides that I have prepared, however, I am okay to talk through without slides if you are okay with that. And I'm glad that just now we had a bit of a commercial break that we sort of got hacked, or somebody that were not supposed to be in the call came into the call. But thanks to the editor for muting everyone. I think that was the thing, that the action was taken to mute everyone, and then also to remove the individual. Okay, now I have three topics today. First of all, I'd like to discuss about the barriers of digital transformation. This is the what, and I don't have to go into the why, but the how is the time I'm going to spend a bit more, because in the last few months, I have been invited to a lot of the talks to talk about how we could transform of ourselves, and the flavor of the year and the years to come is none other than artificial intelligence. Gen AI has been around for a while, and a big talk, particularly last year. And this year, agentic AI, agent AI is the one that is coming on stream, and a lot of curiosity among people. I'll talk a bit about my experience. I'll tell stories, I guess. It's more interesting about my stories of how I engage many organizations and what I've observed. And finally, I'll talk a little bit about the relevance of my book that I've launched called Innovate to Elevate, which was launched a couple of months ago. And thanks to Andrew for graciously been there, and it's been very supportive as well. Thanks, Andrew. All right, now first, let me touch on the what and a bit of the why on digital transformation. What are we going on in this age and time? As we all know, we are moving into a very unprecedented age. For those of us that's been around in the last few decades, you will notice that a few things, characteristics. First, the change. Change is constant, but not at the level that we have seen in the past. Now, I think it's a good or bad news, depend how you see it, is that the change is going to accelerate even far more in the next decade or so. Now, the thing is this, when I say it depends how you see it, is that if you are not ready for the change or the organizations is not ready, you will see it as stress. But there are organizations and individuals who embrace change and leverage and take advantage of change. Let me give an example. My personal story. I noticed as I look back in the last 30 years in my career, one of the things I realized after the fact, looking back, is that I have the ability to sustain through my career was a couple of characteristics which I think is important. One of them is about agility, adaptability, and adopt. Adaptation is extremely important. And while we humans have adaptability skills, as you know, we came from the caveman age and, the rest of our history. But it's human nature not to change. We like consistency. It's very comforting to go to the same home, sleep in the same bed, go to a restaurant, sleep in the same corner. When you travel on business, I believe many of us typically sit around the same place, maybe near the windows, the couple of seats. So we are human, we are creatures of habits, and habits give us reduced stress because we don't have to think, we don't have to plan, we just do it and spend all the mental capacity to enjoy other things. So, however, this ability to or this preference to be consistent and not change is quite against the world that has been changing. We got to possess the ability to determine when do we not change and be consistent, and when do we need to adapt. So my own personal story is that the adaptability factor is key. And if you may ask me what caused me to be adaptable, one of the things as I look back again is the high sense of curiosity. Having a curious mindset always makes me think about what's next, why, and this propel me to search for the answers, and this continue to sustain me mentally. So now it's interesting that you may then ask, then how do you create a mental mindset? Wow, that potentially might be my next book. I I'm very curious about how one can. I'm sure there's a lot of current research by the academics, by the brilliant minds about how to create a curious mindset. But I want to think about how do I make it more tangible? How do we have any one of us laymen understand, adapt, and adopt the curious mindset? Because I think that curious mindset is essential, it's critical to make us to be more adaptable, to propel us. The second thing's around, we all know that is passion. All right. I don't want to go there anymore because I think many of you have seen and understood. But one of the things I want to touch on is about something related to my own stories with the customers, is about organizational learning. In my book, Innovate to Elevate, there are three frameworks that I talk about. One is about customer experience. Second framework is about innovation framework, and third one is about Gen AI, how organizations can use Gen AI, and where do they start. Now, organization learning, back to that point, I think it's important because let me tell you a short story that you might know. Microsoft, when I left in 2013, that was somewhat 12 years ago, it was the time there was a transition between the CEO I was under, Steve Ballmer, and the new CEO, Satya Nadella. And I was under both CEO. The new CEO, Satya, was under him for about 9 months before I left, but the transition was significant. And by now, we all know with a couple of books that Satya has written and how he has transformed a sleepy giant to today one of the most formidable force, Microsoft. And he would, if you limit him to very, very little comments, what he has done differently, the answer is learning. The keynote speaker has talked about learning, and I'm a big fan about. Satya talked about how he transformed Microsoft from know it all to learn it all. Now, this is transformative because Microsoft was at that time already quite mature, so mature that it became stagnant. Right now, he had transformed the world to say, hey, look, we are the best in the world. We dominate the world in the productivity space. all right, in the employee workspace, office space. But you need to take that head off and start to think about how do you learn it all. So from that propels many things that come about. I encourage you to get his book, Satya Nadella, about transforming the minds and organization. It can start from the individual level. So he inspired me a lot as well. So organization learning is one of the key pillars for CX strategy. And the reason why I wrote the book is because three things. I wanted to have a legacy behind, because my things were all over the place. My frameworks, my experience were many PowerPoints, different laptops, SharePoints. It's not sleek enough to put in one place. Secondly, it's a very wonderful gift that I could leave behind for people, or leave behind for my next generation, if you like. And it's a very nice gift that you can give to someone, or share with someone your experience and thoughts. Finally, it's also a thought leadership piece, where if you want to establish yourself as a thought leader, that's one of the many ways that you can do that. Now, the final point I'd like to talk about a little bit is about, there was a recent study, and also based on my engagement with my customers, about Gen AI adoption. The study was conducted over 6 months and across 2,300 executives across 14 industries and 34 countries. What it has revealed that only 1% of the CEOs think that Gen AI is a fad. And by today, of course, it's zero. And a lot of organizations are gearing up. 83% of organizations is a strategy for AI, but only 51% know how to execute. That's also my job as well. My job right now as a vice president of AI and data is to help customers to transform from the strategic side. I do a lot of AI strategy workshop in a format that help them to derive their own AI strategy. But the key thing is this: it always links back to business strategy, vision, mission of the organization. I don't talk anything about technology at all, because unless you figure out what you want to solve the problem, then you talk about technology. Because if you talk technology too soon, which is a human nature again, jumping into the technology too soon, something really cool coming up, let's see where we can apply it wrong. You got to find out the problems first. By the time you figure that problems out, and by the time you come to the technology, you are spoiled for choice. You have too many choices that you have another problem which one to use. But don't go with technology. I encourage you, even though I spent my 30 years in technology, I will tell all my engagement with my customers is to discuss what keeps them awake at night, what are their customers' problems, what they're trying to solve, what are their key imperatives, what are their growth plans in the next 1, 2, 3 years, and how does the technology later on is the AI strategy outcome can link to the business strategy. So I have sort of shared quite a little bit about what I have on the slides, which I'm very comfortable to talk through. I'm ready to take questions now, and I'm looking at the chat right now to take questions, because how many minutes do I have left?
You have 4 minutes left.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah. There's one question already in the chat box.
Yeah, it's how can we leverage AI to enable us to move into organization learning? Wonderful. So I'd like to start with defining, first of all, I suppose when your question is luck, the question is about organization learning. So therefore it is, not for the individual. You have to define your vision mission in that regards first. How does learning help the organization? What is the end point of the learning your organization want to get to in the short and long term? And the why. Now, use not just management level. You need to be able to have a campaign to make sure that everyone, your company, if it's 10 people, 100, 1,000 people, make sure that the communication is clear throughout. So figure that out first. And then once you figure that out, you then look at what are the challenges, because it has to solve some of the challenges, the barriers to learning, for example. Now, once you can figure that out, you need to look at some of the elements around learning, what constitute, it goes to the level of which country, which markets, which BU, And you go to the level of which initiatives. When I say which, I'm talking about prioritization here. Instead of therefore, you need to figure it out. It's also a very strategic discussion. Now, after all this that I talk about and a bit more, you then go into what are the outcomes you want to achieve. Have the end in mind. Start with the end, work through the process. And as you work through the process, then you start to bring in the tools, the technology in. And that will be the way that I describe and share with you about the process. Yeah, happy to have more discussion, Luck. Reach out, any one of you reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to have a chat. When most of the jobs can be automated with agentic AI, what do you think human would do in the future? What should we equip ourselves with? Now, let me just define the interesting question. Now, we humans have a big part to play in the future, even regardless that's Gen AI coming up, even if it takes over all the jobs. Why I said so? Because we are in the driving seat of design. We are the driving seat of having a vision. Sure, Gen AI are able to imagine and think about the future. But I think there's still some way to go, at least a couple of years more, I think, or a decade more before it gets to a point where you need to worry about. We still are in a driving seat. Go for the strategy. Think about the strategic end in mind. All right. Now, so therefore, I'm not too worried about having enough jobs for us. We still have so much to do. And how do we prepare ourselves? First of all, learning again, right? It dives back to learning, and you need to make sure that you have a mindset, a curious mindset. And then you need to think about what is the end in mind you want to achieve. Now, get coaches, speak to people, get help, because they are your rear view mirror, your side mirrors, to make a plan and be very agile. As you plan out the plan, as you execute the plan, make sure that you are not stubborn about the way, constantly learning from others. And there are many coaches out there. I think we have far more coaches that we need in the industry right now. But this is just to put the humor side of it. Get yourself a coach, mentor, get mentors, and I'm sure that it will give you different point of view that will help you. Okay. People's mind was how to get better, faster, horse. Yeah. How can be forward thinking and problem statement. Now, I'd like to share a bit of my experience. Well, in Amazon, we have this value about and philosophy about working backwards. And I was very lucky, but in my role was to help customers to innovate. That also formed the basis of my book. I help customers how to innovate. In the innovation process, we learn about working backwards from. So don't think about a horse, make a better horse, faster horse, or transform differently. If you can figure out the end in mind, okay, there's some level of art and science, the visioning, work backwards from there and go in detail. Don't jump any steps. We go into the empathy side of design thinking very huge way. And that is nonstop. You know, you can even spend 20 years empathizing customers' problem for a certain issues. Well, although we don't have 20 years, but what I'm saying, my stress point is that don't shortcut trying to understand the problem. Build a strategy and then work backwards. And then you'll be surprised what kind of technology or what kind of tools in the end it will come out. It may not even be a technology question at all. Let's see if I can just take last questions.
Yes, this is the last question
Yes,
from Andrew.
I read your mind. Thank you.
Yes.
Andrew question, how do innovate working back vision? Yes, thank you, Andrew, for emphasizing. So just concluding, maybe not a question, just my conclusion of this talk. And again, thank you, Andrew and the team for this opportunity. Feel free to reach out to me. My book is also available in Amazon, but the price is wrong out there. It's $64. It's too high. I like to share my knowledge, not just through the book, but also in a one-to-one or one-to-many sessions whenever the time allows. Happy to share and make friends. And most importantly, you know what? You think you can learn from me? You'll be surprised. Very often, I will learn from the conversation from you. Thank you very much, all. I wish you guys a very great day.